My name is Amber, and at 27, I've always been the dependable daughter my parents could count on. When Dad's medical issues started piling up bills, I didn't hesitate to transfer $2,800 from my savings money I'd been setting aside for my future. 3 weeks later, I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram when my heart stopped. There was my entire family: mom, dad, my brother, sister, and their partners smiling on a cruise ship deck. Dad looked perfectly healthy, and I wasn't in a single photo. They never even told me about the trip. Before I continue my story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I confronted them about using my hard-earned money for their Caribbean vacation. Growing up in a cozy neighborhood in Seattle, our family of 5 seemed picture-perfect to outsiders. My parents, Alina and Richard, created what appeared to be a loving home for me and my siblings. Dad worked as a construction manager, often coming home tired but always making time to attend my brother Jason's football games. Mom taught part-time at the local elementary school, which gave her flexibility to be present for my younger sister Megan's dance recitals. I was the middle child, sandwiched between Jason, who was 3 years older, and Megan, who was 4 years younger. From an early age, family dynamics became clear. Jason was the athletic, golden boy who could do no wrong. By the time he reached high school, he was breaking records on the football field, attracting scouts from colleges across the country. My parents never missed his games, proudly wearing custom-made jerseys with his number. Megan was the baby of the family, adorable with her blonde curls and infectious laugh. Being the youngest, she received special treatment that neither Jason nor I experienced. When she wanted ballet lessons, my parents found the money. When she wanted the latest fashion trends, shopping trips were arranged. Her room was redecorated 3 times throughout her teenage years, while mine kept the same pale yellow walls from childhood. And then there was me. I was the responsible one, the mediator, the helper. I babysat Megan when my parents took Jason to out-of-town tournament. I maintained straight as without much recognition because academic achievement didn't fill bleachers like football games did. I learned to cook family meals at 14 because Mom was often exhausted from juggling teaching and Megan's packed schedule of activities. Amber is so self-sufficient, my mother would tell her friends, as if my independence was innate rather than necessary. She never gives us any trouble. This became my identity, the daughter who didn't need attention because she was handling everything on her own. During high school, I worked weekends at a local coffee shop, saving most of what I earn. My parents encouraged this, praising my work ethic while simultaneously expecting me to contribute to household expenses once I turned 16. Meanwhile, Jason's part-time job money was his to spend, usually on supplements for his training or taking girls to movies. Megan didn't work at all during high school. She needs to focus on her studies and activities, Mom would say. College amplified these disparities. Jason received a partial athletic scholarship, but my parents proudly covered the remainder of his expenses. When it was my turn, they sat me down for a realistic conversation about finances. We just don't have the same resources anymore, Dad explained, though nothing about their lifestyle had changed. I cobbled together scholarships, loans, and worked 3 part-time jobs: campus library assistant during weekdays, restaurant server on weekends, and online tutor during any spare hours. Despite these differences in treatment, I maintained close relationships with my family. I called home weekly during college, sent thoughtful gifts for birthdays despite my tight budget, and never complained about the inequity. When Jason tore his ACL during his junior year, ending his professional sports dreams, I took a bus home every other weekend to help with his recovery, often missing work shifts and falling behind on my studies. After graduating with a business degree, I accepted a marketing position in Portland. The distance from Seattle was both liberating and challenging. I finally had space to build my own life, but I still felt responsible for maintaining family connections. I established a tradition of monthly family video calls to stay connected. I never missed sending gifts for birthdays and holidays, often spending hours selecting items that showed how well I knew each person despite the distance. My relationship with each family member evolved differently after I moved. Dad and I connected through discussions about my career. He'd always been business-minded and enjoyed hearing about my project. Mom and I had more superficial conversations, usually centered around family news or her classroom stories. Jason, now working in construction management like Dad, rarely initiated contact but was friendly when we spoke. Megan, attending college in California, kept in touch mainly through social media and occasional texts about relationship drama. Despite living independently for 5 years, I remained emotionally tethered to my family's approval. Their subtle messages that I wasn't quite meeting expectations lingered in my mind. When I received a promotion, Mom's response was, "That's nice, dear. Jason might be getting one too." When I mentioned a vacation I'd planned with friends, Dad asked if I was being responsible with my money. These comments stung, but I dismissed them as parental concern rather than the subtle undermining they really were. I'd created a successful life in Portland. My apartment was small but stylish, located in a vibrant neighborhood near downtown. I'd formed close friendships, particularly with my roommate Rachel, who often commented on my family's behavior. "They take you for granted," she'd observe after overhearing my phone calls home. I'd defend them reflexively, explaining away their actions as unintentional or justified by circumstances I didn't fully understand. This pattern of justification was about to be severely tested. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in April. I was preparing dinner after a particularly demanding day at work when Mom's name flashed across my screen. I answered cheerfully, expecting our usual casual conversation. Instead, her voice trembled as she spoke. "Amber, something's happened with your father," she began, instantly sending my heart racing. "His knee finally gave out completely. The doctor says he needs surgery right away." Dad had been having knee problems for years, a result of decades in construction, but had always brushed off suggestions to see a specialist. According to Mom, he collapsed at work that morning, unable to stand. An emergency room visit confirmed what physicians had been warning. He needed a full knee replacement, and postponing it further had caused additional damage. "The surgery is scheduled for next week," Mom continued, her voice growing more strained. "But there's a problem with the insurance. They're only covering 60% because we switched plans last year, and the deductible is much higher." As she detailed the financial situation, my stomach tightened. Between the surgery, the anticipated physical therapy, and the time Dad would need off work, they were looking at significant expenses. "We've gone through our emergency fund with the home repairs last year," she explained. "And you know how your brother is still paying off his truck. Megan's tuition is due next month too." There was a pause before she added, "I hate to ask this, sweetheart, but could you help us out? Just until the insurance reimbursement comes through." I sat down at my kitchen table, dinner forgotten. "Of course, Mom, how much do you need?" Her relief was audible. "The immediate bills are about $2,800. I promise we'll pay you back as soon as everything gets sorted out." $2,800. Almost 3 months of rent. The money I'd been saving for a professional development course that would position me for another promotion. The weekend getaway I'd planned with Rachel to celebrate our birthdays. "Let me check my accounts and call you back," I told her, needing time to process the request. After hanging up, I opened my banking app and stared at my savings balance. I had just over $5,000 saved, the result of 2 years of careful budgeting. Taking out $2,800 would significantly deplete this safety net, but this was my father's health we were talking about. I called Mom back within the hour, confirming I could transfer the money the next day. She cried with gratitude, promising again they would repay me as soon as possible. "Don't worry about paying me back right away," I assured her. "Dad's recovery is what mattered." The following morning, I transferred $2,800 to my parents' account before heading to work. I felt a mix of anxiety and virtue, worried about my diminished savings but satisfied that I could help my family when they needed it. I texted Mom confirmation of the transfer, receiving a string of heart emojis in response. Over the next 2 weeks, I called frequently to check on Dad's recovery. The responses were consistently vague. "He's resting," Mom would say, or "the doctors are pleased with his progress." When I offered to take time off work to visit and help care for him, the excuses began. "Oh, the house is a mess right now. Let's wait until he's more mobile. The doctor wants to limit visitors because of infection risk. This weekend isn't good. Jason's family is coming by and it would be too hectic." These explanations seemed reasonable individually, but collectively they raised a flag. In previous family health situations, everyone had gathered immediately. When Grandma had her hip replaced, we'd practically camped in her living room for weeks. Meanwhile, my own financial situation was becoming strained. I'd canceled my birthday plans with Rachel, explaining the situation. She'd been supportive but concerned. "That's a lot of money, Amber. Are you sure they couldn't have found another way?" I defended them, pointing out that medical emergencies weren't predictable. Still, I found myself cutting back on expenses I'd never worried about before, bringing lunch from home instead of occasional takeout with coworkers, canceling my streaming subscriptions, putting off needed car maintenance. Work became more challenging during this period too. I was in the final stages of a major marketing campaign that required long hours and creative energy I couldn't seem to muster. My director had hinted at a promotion possibility if the campaign succeeded, adding pressure to an already stressful situation. Through it all, communication with my family remained oddly distant. Dad never came to the phone when I called. Jason and Megan texted rarely, and when they did, neither mentioned our father's condition. Mom's updates became increasingly brief, often ending with, "I should go, we're about to have dinner," or "the physical therapist just arrived." One evening, after a particularly evasive call with Mom, I texted Megan directly. "Hey, how's Dad really doing?" Mom seems stressed whenever I ask. Her response was delayed by several hours. "He's fine. Don't worry so much." The dismissive tone bothered me, but I attributed it to Megan's characteristic casualness. I didn't know then that this brief exchange was just the tip of a massive iceberg of deception. Friday evening, 3 weeks after sending the money, I was mentally exhausted from a long workweek. The marketing campaign had launched successfully, but the celebration happy hour with my team had only highlighted my financial constraints. I'd nursed one drink all evening while others ordered rounds. At home, I changed into comfortable clothes and collapsed onto my couch, mindlessly scrolling through Instagram as Rachel prepared dinner in our shared kitchen. I was barely paying attention to the images flashing by until a familiar face caught my eye. It was Jason, my brother, standing on what appeared to be a cruise ship deck, cocktail in hand, ocean stretching behind him. I sat up straight, suddenly alert. The caption read, "Day 3 and living the dream." My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before I tapped his profile to see more photos. There were dozens of them, posted over the past. Photos of Jason and his girlfriend Kimberly by the pool. Photos of Megan and her boyfriend Tom at a formal dinner. And most disturbingly, photos of my parents, including my supposedly recovering father, looking tan, relaxed, and completely healthy as they posed on beautiful beaches and participated in excursions. "Rachel," I called, my voice strained. "Can you come look at this?" Rachel peered over my shoulder, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock as she understood what I was seeing. "Is that your dad? The one who just had knee surgery?" I nodded, unable to speak as I continued scrolling. There he was, standing unassisted on a beautiful white sand beach. Another photo showed him in swim trunks by a pool, no bandages or signs of recent surgery visible. In yet another, he was dancing with my mother at what appeared to be a ship's nightclub. With shaking hands, I switched to Megan's profile, then my mother's, finding more evidence of our Caribbean adventure. Based on the timestamps, they had departed just 2 weeks after I'd transferred the money, meaning the cruise had likely been booked before they'd even asked me for financial help. The full family was there. Mom, Dad, Jason and Kimberly, Megan and Tom. Everyone except me. My stomach lurched as I made the connection. The $2,800 I'd sent money I believed was for my father's medical expenses had almost certainly helped fund this fan vacation. A vacation I hadn't even been told about, let alone invited to join. "This can't be right," I whispered, though the evidence was undeniable. I continued my investigation, reading comments on their photos. Family friends had written things like, "So glad you could all get away together," and "What a perfect family trip." One comment from my Aunt Patricia particularly stung. "Nothing better than quality time with all the kids." Clearly, others believed I was there too, or at least knew about the trip. I searched online for cruise packages matching their itinerary. A 7-day Caribbean cruise for 6 people on that particular line would cost approximately $9,000, $12,000, depending on cabin types and excursions. By $2,800 could have covered nearly a third of the base cost. Rachel sat beside me, her dinner preparations abandoned. "Amber, I don't even know what to say. This is beyond messed up." I tried to rationalize their behavior, a deeply ingrained habit. Maybe Dad's surgery was less serious than they thought. Maybe they had this plan for months and what? Forgot to mention it to you. Asked you for money they clearly didn't need for medical bills. Rachel's indignation was rising. "Look at these photos, Amber. Your dad is dancing, on a cruise ship, after supposedly needing knee surgery so badly they had to ask you for money." The rational explanations I'd been reaching for crumbled. This wasn't a misunderstanding or poor communication. This was deliberate deception. I set my phone down, suddenly feeling physically ill. The room seemed to spin slightly as the implications sank in. My own parents had lied to me. They had taken my hard-earned money under false pretenses. They had taken the entire family on vacation without even telling me about it. But the exclusion hurt even more than the financial deception. They hadn't just forgotten to invite me, they had actively hidden the trip from me, creating an elaborate lie about my father's health to ensure I wouldn't find out. I need to call them, I said, reaching for my phone again. Rachel gently took it from my hands. Not right now. You're too upset, and they're still on the cruise anyway. Take some time to process this first. She was right. In my current state, any conversation would likely devolve into accusations and emotional outbursts. I needed to understand exactly what had happened and why before confronting them. As Rachel returned to the kitchen, I continued examining the photos, looking for clues I might have missed. Based on the geotags and captions, I pieced together their itinerary, a 7-day Eastern Caribbean cruise with stops in the Bahamas, St. Thomas, and St. Martin, exactly the kind of vacation I'd mentioned wanting to take someday. Had they deliberately excluded me? Or had I simply been an afterthought, someone so peripheral to family plans that they didn't consider my inclusion necessary? Neither possibility offered any comfort. As the initial shock began to fade, a cold, hard anger took its place. For years, I had excused their behavior, rationalized the inequities in how they treated their children. But this betrayal was too blatant to explain away. That night, I barely slept, my mind cycling through memories of other exclusions I had dismissed throughout my life. The family trip to Yellowstone when I was 16 that coincided exactly with my summer job's busiest week. The holiday dinner I'd driven 4 hours to attend, only to discover they'd changed the time without telling me. The family photos on my parents' wall that featured every combination of family members except those including me. What had once seemed like unfortunate timing or innocent oversight now appeared as a pattern I had been too loyal to recognize. The weekend after discovering the cruise photos became a blur of emotions. Sleep eluded me Friday night, and by Saturday morning, my eyes were swollen from crying and lack of rest. Rachel found me at the kitchen table at 6 a.m., staring blankly at my untouched coffee. "You look terrible," she said, sitting across from me. "Did you sleep at all?" I shook my head. Maybe an hour. I kept thinking about all the times I've dropped everything to help them. When Jason tore his ACL in college, I skipped final exam preparation to help him. When Megan broke up with her high school boyfriend, I drove 3 hours to console her. When Mom needed help painting the house last summer, I used my only vacation days. Rachel reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "You've always been there for them." And they couldn't even tell me they were going on a family vacation. My voice cracked. They lied about Dad needing surgery. They took my money I worked extra hours to save and spent it on margaritas and snorkeling trips. Rachel's outrage matched my own. "You need to call them out. Today, they're probably still on the cruise, but you could text them or email." The thought of confrontation made my stomach churn. Despite everything, the deeply ingrained desire to avoid family conflict held me back. I don't want to create drama. They created the drama, Amber. You're just responding to it. I knew she was right, but I couldn't bring myself to act yet. Instead, I spent the day in a fog, attempting normal Saturday activities that felt suddenly meaningless. I went through the motions of laundry and grocery shopping, but my mind continuously returned to the betrayal. By Saturday evening, the sadness had given way to waves of anger. I found myself mentally composing scathing messages to each family member. In my imagination, I told them exactly how their actions had hurt me, how they had taken advantage of my generosity, how they had confirmed my lifelong suspicion that I somehow mattered less than everyone else in the family. As night fell, Rachel suggested we order takeout and watch a movie to distract me. Halfway through the film, I suddenly stood up. "The Wilsons' anniversary dinner," I said. Rachel looked confused. "What?" "Last year, my parents' friends the Wilsons had their 30th anniversary dinner. I wasn't invited because supposedly it was just family and very close friends, but then I saw photos. Jason and Kimberly were there. Megan and Tom were there. All these people from the neighborhood were there." The memory had surfaced suddenly, one of countless small exclusions. When I asked Mom about it, she said they assumed I wouldn't want to drive from Portland for just a dinner. As the weekend progressed, more memories emerged, a steady stream of instances where I had been sidelined or taken for granted. My brother's graduation trip to Hawaii that my parents had organized as a boys' adventure with Dad. My sister's sweet 16 celebration where I had been asked to handle the photography rather than participate as a guest. The family Christmas card photo taken during a weekend I had been unable to visit due to work commitments. No offer to reschedule the shoot had been made. By Sunday, I had lost my appetite completely. Rachel hovered nearby, concerned but unsure how to help. I tried to focus on work projects due the following week, but concentration was impossible. Every time my phone chimed with a notification, my heart raced, thinking it might be family members realizing their deception had been discovered. But the cruise photos continued to appear in my feed, each new image twisting the knife deeper. Sunday evening, I finally broke down completely. Rachel found me sobbing on the bathroom floor, overcome with the accumulated weight of years of feeling secondary in my own family. "What's wrong with me?" I asked between gasps for air. "Why am I not good enough for them to include?" Rachel sat beside me on the cold tile floor. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with you, Amber. You are incredibly generous, thoughtful, and loyal, too loyal to people who don't deserve it. This isn't about you being lacking in any way. This is about them being selfish and thoughtless." "But there must be something," I insisted. "People don't just exclude someone they truly care about." "Some families develop unhealthy dynamics," Rachel said gently. "From everything you've told me, you've been cast as the responsible one, the giver, the one who doesn't need attention or consideration because you'll be fine regardless. They've taken advantage of that role they assigned you." Deep down, I knew she was right. For years, I had accepted the family narrative that I was independent and self-sufficient, qualities that had somehow translated into doesn't need to be included or can be called upon for help but doesn't require reciprocation. As Monday morning arrived, I called in sick to work for the first time in over 2 years. My boss, Diane, was understanding, especially given my perfect attendance record and the successful campaign launched the previous week. "Take the time you need, Amber," she said. "The team can handle things for a day or two." I spent Monday alternating between periods of emotional numbness and intense anger. In a moment of rage, I drafted a lengthy email to my parents, detailing every grievance and hurt feeling from the past decade. I even went so far as to type their email addresses into the recipient field, my finger hovering over the send button before Rachel intervened. "Not like this," she cautioned. "You'll regret sending something this raw. Wait until you can approach this more strategically." She was right again. Burning bridges in anger wouldn't help anyone, least of all myself. Instead, I decided to wait until they returned from the cruise to address the situation. According to their posted itinerary, they would be back home by Wednesday. In the meantime, I made an appointment with a therapist Rachel had recommended months ago, an appointment I had repeatedly postponed because it hadn't seemed necessary or worth the expense. Now, the need for professional guidance in navigating this family crisis felt urgent. By Tuesday, physical symptoms of distress had manifested. Tension headaches, upset stomach, and continued insomnia left me feeling physically ill. I returned to work but struggled to focus on tasks that normally engaged me fully. Colleagues noticed my subdued demeanor, but I deflected their concerns with vague references to a family situation. The most difficult aspect of those days was the constant internal questioning. Had I misinterpreted their actions? Was I overreacting? Should I simply forgive and forget to preserve family harmony, as I had done so many times before? But every time these doubts surfaced, I returned to the evidence. The cruise photos, the deliberate lie about my father's health, the calculated exclusion, and the misappropriation of funds I had sacrificed to provide. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a betrayal that required acknowledgement and accountability. By Wednesday afternoon, as I knew my family would be returning home, anger had crystallized into resolve. I would not allow this to be swept under the rug. I would not accept flimsy excuses or minimization of my feelings. For perhaps the first time in my relationship with my family, I would demand the respect and consideration I deserved. I just needed to find the right moment to make that stand. Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Hi, sweetheart, how are you doing? We just got back from a little trip yesterday. Catching up on laundry today. Dad's feeling so much better, love you." The casual tone, the vague reference to a little trip, and the continued lie about my father's health made my blood boil. After consulting with Rachel, I composed a deliberately neutral response. "Glad to hear Dad's better. I'm pretty busy with work this week. Talk soon. Mom replied immediately with heart emojis, but didn't press for details, another telling sign. Normally, she would have asked questions about my work projects or suggested a call. Friday morning, a group text arrived from Jason. Family video call this Sunday at 3 p.m. PT. Mom wants to catch up with everyone. Everyone except me had been together for the past week, but I confirmed my availability with a simple, "I'll be there." The others quickly chimed in with their confirmation, and the stage was set for the confrontation I both dreaded and needed. I spent the intervening days preparing mentally for the call. I wrote out talking points, practiced what I wanted to say, and even role-played the conversation with Rachel. I anticipated their likely responses and planned my rebuttals. Most importantly, I worked on maintaining emotional control. I wanted to be clear and firm, not overcome by hurt feelings mid-conversation. Sunday arrived with a sense of impending reckoning. I set up my laptop in my bedroom rather than the living room, wanting privacy for what would likely be an uncomfortable exchange. At precisely 3 p.m., I joined the video call. One by one, the familiar faces appeared on screen. Mom and Dad sat together on their living room couch, tan and relaxed. Jason joined from his apartment, Kimberly visible in the background. Megan and Tom appeared to be in her dorm room, squished together to fit in the frame. "Amber, there you are," Mom exclaimed with forced cheerfulness. "We've missed you." Dad nodded in agreement. "How's work going, kiddo?" I took a deep breath. "Work is fine. How was the cruise?" The question landed like a bomb. 5 faces froze simultaneously, expressions ranging from shock to guilt to defiance. The silence stretched for several seconds before Dad cleared his throat. "Oh, it was a last-minute thing. Great deal we couldn't pass up." Mom jumped in. "We didn't want to bother you with it since we know how busy you are with that big project at work." Their excuses came rapid fire, overlapping in their haste to establish a narrative. "It was really just a quick getaway. We tried to call but couldn't get through. Thought about inviting you but knew you couldn't get time off." I waited until they ran out of words before speaking, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I found out about your cruise the same day. I was skipping lunch to save money because I gave you $2,800 for Dad's supposed knee surgery." Another uncomfortable silence descended. Jason studied his hands. Megan suddenly became very interested in adjusting her camera. Mom looked at Dad with wide eyes, clearly hoping he would take the lead. "About that," Dad began, his tone defensive. "The money was still used for health purposes. The doctor actually recommended rest and relaxation for my knee and the cruise." "Stop." My interruption was quiet but firm. "Please don't insult my intelligence by suggesting that a Caribbean cruise was medically necessary. You lied to me. You told me Dad needed surgery. You said insurance wouldn't cover everything. You made it sound like a financial emergency." Mom's expression shifted to wounded indignation. "Now Amber, that's not entirely fair. Your father was having knee problems. Was he unable to walk? Did he collapse at work? Did he need surgery within the week?" I asked, referencing the specific claims they had made during our call. "Well, no, but..." "Then you lied," I stated simply. "And you used my money I work hard for, money I've been saving for my own future to help fund a family vacation that you deliberately excluded me from." The call erupted into chaos. Mom started crying, Dad's face turned red with anger, Jason attempted to mediate, and Megan complained that I was ruining everything as usual. Through the crosstalk, I caught fragments of their defenses. "We were going to pay you back. You wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. We figured you couldn't get away from work. Why are you making such a big deal about this?" I waited for the noise to subside before speaking again. "When did you book the cruise?" No one answered immediately. Finally, Jason admitted, "About a month ago. There was a special rate if you booked 6 cabins together." "So before you called me about Dad's knee," I confirm. "You already had this planned when you asked me for money." Dad attempted to redirect. "The timing isn't really the point, Amber. We've always supported you, and families help each other out." "When have you supported me financially as an adult?" I asked. "When I was struggling to pay for college and working 3 jobs, you said I needed to learn financial independence. When I needed a car repair last year and mentioned being short that month, you suggested I budget better, but when you want to take a luxury vacation, suddenly I'm expected to contribute." Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We just didn't think you'd be interested in a family cruise. You're always so busy with your Portland life and your career. You didn't think I'd be interested in spending time with my family. Or you didn't think I'd be interested in finding out my money was funding your vacation instead of Dad's medical care. The hurt in my voice was evident despite my attempts at control. Megan rolled her eyes. It's just money, Amber. Why are you being so materialistic? Family is more important than money. This isn't about the money, I responded, though that was partially untrue. The money mattered. It represented hours of my life, sacrifices I had made. This is about respect and honesty. You lied to get money from me, and you excluded me from a family event. We didn't exclude you, Mom insisted. We just didn't think you could make it with your work schedule. You never asked, I pointed out. You never even told me about it. I found out from Instagram photos. Dad's frustration visibly mounted. Look, if it's about the money, fine. We'll pay you back. Is that what you want? Yes, I want the money back. But I also want an acknowledgement of what really happened here. You didn't call me with a medical emergency. You called me with a made-up story because you wanted extra spending money for a cruise. The conversation continued in circles, with my family alternating between defensive justifications and attempts to minimize the situation. Jason suggested I was overreacting, while Megan complained that I was always so serious about everything. Mom continued to cry intermittently, a tactic that had often ended family disagreements in her favor. Finally, Dad admitted, yes, we had already booked the cruise when we called you. But your mother was worried about the budget being tight, and we knew you had savings. So you lied about needing surgery, I pressed. I have been having knee pain, he insisted. The doctor did recommend rest. We just exaggerated the urgency. It was the closest thing to an admission I was likely to get. As the call approached the 1-hour mark, emotions remained high but productive dialogue had ceased. My family had moved from denial to minimization, but genuine accountability seemed beyond their capacity. I want the money repaid, I stated clearly, and I need time to process how I feel about this breach of trust. Mom looked alarmed. What does that mean? It means I need space. I won't be calling for a while. You're cutting us off over money, Dad asked incredulously. I'm taking a step back because you lied to me, took advantage of me, and don't seem to understand why that's wrong. My voice finally cracked. And none of you have actually apologized. After a few more minutes of unproductive back and forth, I ended the call, emotionally drained, but also experiencing a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time, I had directly confronted my family's treatment of me rather than making excuses for it. Rachel was waiting in the living room. How did it go? About as well as could be expected, I said. They admitted to lying but don't think it's a big deal. They promised to repay the money but made me feel greedy for wanting it back. And they're completely baffled as to why I'm hurt about being excluded. Typical, Rachel sighed. Did it help at all to confront them? I considered the question carefully. Yes, I finally decided. Not because they understood or changed, but because I finally stood up for myself. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone buzzed with texts from various family members. Mom, please call me when you've calmed down. Dad, we'll send you a check this week. Jason, don't be so hard on them, they meant well. Megan, way to ruin Dad's first day back home with your drama. I silenced my phone and placed it in a drawer. The confrontation had ended, but the aftermath was just beginning. The week following the confrontation brought silence from my parents. My siblings, however, couldn't seem to help themselves from weighing in. Jason texted Monday afternoon with what he clearly considered a peacemaking message. Hey sis, I know you're upset, and I get it. Mom and Dad shouldn't have asked you for money that way. But they're from a different generation. They don't always handle things perfectly. They really do love you. I appreciated his acknowledgement that the situation was wrong, but his quick pivot to excusing their behavior was frustrating. Still, it was more understanding than Megan's approach. Her message arrived Tuesday morning. You've always been so dramatic about everything. Mom's been crying for 2 days because you're taking a step back. How could you be so selfish? They made one mistake and you're punishing the whole family. I didn't respond to either message, needing time to process my own feelings before engaging with theirs. By Wednesday, however, the family communication channels had expanded. My phone rang with a call from Aunt Caroline, my mother's sister. Amber, sweetheart, she began after I reluctantly answered. I just got off the phone with your mother. She's absolutely distraught. Did she tell you why? I asked, curious about which version of events had been shared. She said there was a misunderstanding about some money you lent them, and now you're not speaking to anyone, Caroline summarized, clearly having received the sanitized version. Whatever happened, family is too important to throw away over financial dispute. I took a deep breath. Aunt Caroline, I love you, but you don't have the full story. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They deliberately lied to get money from me, used it for a luxury vacation, and didn't even tell me about the trip, let alone invite me. The silence on the other end suggested this information was new to her. Oh, I see, that does put things in a different light. We spoke for nearly an hour, with Caroline gradually shifting from mediator to sympathetic ear as she learned more details. By the end of our conversation, she offered unexpected support. Your mother has always played favorites, even when we were children, she admitted. I've watched how they treat you compared to your siblings, and it's not right. Stand your ground on this, Amber. They need to recognize what they've done. Her validation meant more than I could express for years. I had questioned my own perceptions, wondering if I was imagining the disparities in how my family treated their children. Hearing an insider confirm my experience was both vindicating and painful. By Friday, having received no direct communication from my parents, I decided to formalize my request for repayment. I composed a straightforward email. Mom and Dad, I'm writing to follow up on our conversation about repayment of the $2,800 I provided under the pretense of Dad's medical expenses. Please let me know when and how you plan to return these funds. Amber? Dad's response came within hours, his anger evident even through the typed words. I can't believe you're being so materialistic about this. We raised you better than to put money above family. We'll send a check next week, and I hope once you have your precious money back, you'll stop this childish behavior. His message stung, but it also strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about being materialistic, it was about respect, honesty, and being treated as a valued family member rather than a convenient resource. During this period, Rachel remained my steadfast supporter, but she wasn't my only ally. My therapist, Dr. Marshall, whom I had now seen for 2 sessions, provided valuable perspective on family dynamics and helped me identify patterns I had normalized throughout my life. What you're describing is a classic family system with rigid roles, she explained during our second session. You are assigned the role of the responsible one, which can often translate to being taken for granted. Breaking out of that role naturally creates resistance from other family members who benefit from the status quo. Her insights helped me understand why my stance was generating such strong reactions. I wasn't just asking for money back, I was disrupting a family dynamic that had been established over decades. The weekend brought an unexpected message from Tom, Megan's boyfriend. We had always been friendly but never particularly close, which made his outreach surprising. Hey Amber, I just wanted to say I think you're getting a raw deal here. I was uncomfortable with the whole situation on the cruise when I found out they had asked you for money for your dad's medical bills. I told Megan it didn't seem right, but she insisted it wasn't my business. For what it's worth, I think you're right to stand up for yourself. His message was a reminder that outsiders often saw my family dynamics more clearly than I could from within. It also suggested that the united front my family presented during our video call might not be as solid as it appeared. 10 days after the confrontation, the family divisions became even more apparent when my cousin Emily called. We had been close as children, but had drifted apart in adulthood, connecting mainly through social media and occasional family gatherings. I heard about what happened with the cruise, she began. Aunt Alina called my mom, who told me. I just wanted to say I've been there. Emily went on to share similar experiences with her immediate family, instances of exclusion, differential treatment compared to her brother, and the expectation that she would provide support without receiving the same consideration in return. It's like there's this unspoken hierarchy in the extended family, she observed. Some people are just expected to give more and receive less. I always felt that way, and I could see they treated you the same. Our conversation lasted nearly 2 hours as we reconnected over our shared experiences. By the end, we had made plans to meet in person the next time she visited Portland, building a new branch of family connection even as I pulled back from my immediate relative. 2 weeks after the confrontation, a check for $1,000 arrived in the mail with a note from Dad. First installment. We'll send the rest when we can. The partial payment without any apology or acknowledgement further confirmed that they didn't truly understand the nature of the breach. I deposited the check but didn't acknowledge its receipt, maintaining the distance I had established. My silence apparently unnerved my mother, who began leaving increasingly emotional voicemails. "Amber, please call me back. I don't understand why you're punishing us like this. We sent the first payment. Isn't that what you wanted? Why are you still not talking to us? Your father's blood pressure is up because of all this stress. Is that what you want?" Each message attempted to shift responsibility for the situation onto me, a tactic I now recognize clearly thanks to therapy. I didn't respond to any of them, knowing that re-engaging before I was ready would only lead to being pulled back into unhealthy patterns. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received a text from Jason asking if we could meet for lunch during his upcoming business trip to Portland. I cautiously agreed, curious about his perspective now that some time had passed. We met at a casual restaurant near my office. The conversation started with safe topics: his work, my recent marketing campaign success, mutual acquaintances from Seattle. Eventually, though, we reached the inevitable subject. "I want to apologize," he said, surprising me. "I should have told you about the cruise. I knew it wasn't right that they asked you for money that way. Why didn't you?" He sighed, looking genuinely conflicted. "Honestly, because it was easier not to. I didn't want to be the one to cause problems. And I guess I've always gone along with how Mom and Dad do things, even when I know it's not fair to you." His admission was both validating and disappointing. "You knew they treated me differently." "Everyone knows, Amber. It's just been the status quo for so long that we all accepted it as normal." He pushed his plate aside. "I'm not proud of that. Seeing how upset you were on that call, it made me realize how much we've all taken you for granted." His acknowledgement meant a lot, even if it came too late to prevent the hurt. We parted with a tentative plan to stay in better direct contact, separate from our parents' influence. A few days later, Megan sent a text that suggested Jason had spoken to her as well. "I still think you're overreacting, but I shouldn't have called you dramatic. Sorry about that." It wasn't a full recognition of the situation, but it was a step toward more respectful communication. I responded with a simple, "Thank you for saying that," opening the door to potential reconciliation without rushing the process. By the 1-month mark after the confrontation, family communication had established a new pattern. My parents had sent a second check for $800, bringing the total repayment to $1,800, but our direct interaction remained minimal. I had begun responding to texts with brief, neutral messages but wasn't ready for calls or video chat. My siblings and I communicated independently of our parents, a new development that allowed for more authentic relationships. Extended family members had largely stopped trying to mediate, accepting that this was a situation that needed time to resolve. Most importantly, I had gained clarity about what I needed from family relationships moving forward. The blind loyalty and automatic forgiveness that had characterized my approach for years had been replaced by a commitment to self-respect and healthy boundaries. The hurt remained, but it was no longer consuming. In its place was a growing sense of empowerment and the knowledge that I had finally broken free from patterns that had limited me for decades. As 3 months passed since the confrontation, the acute pain of betrayal gradually transformed into a dull ache of acceptance. I had maintained limited contact with my immediate family, responding to texts but avoiding calls or video chats. This distance had provided necessary space for reflection and healing. On a rainy Tuesday in July, I checked my mailbox to find an envelope with my father's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a check for $1,000 and a brief note. "Amber? The remaining balance will be sent next month. I realize now that I handled this situation poorly. While I can't change what happened, I accept my part in it. Dad." It wasn't a profound apology, but coming from my father, a man who rarely acknowledged mistakes, it represented significant movement. The note carefully avoided mentioning the lie about his health or the exclusion from the family vacation, focusing solely on the financial aspect. Still, it was more accountability than I had expected. I deposited the check without responding directly. The total repayment now stood at $2,800, the full amount I had provided. The financial resolution brought closure to one aspect of the betrayal, but the emotional wounds required more time to heal. A week later, Jason texted asking if I was free for coffee during another business trip to Portland. We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment, the atmosphere between us more relaxed than during our previous lunch. Mom and Dad are struggling with all this, he admitted after we had settled with our drinks. Not just the money they've repaid that now, but with the distance you've created. I needed that distance, I explain. Every time we talked, they minimized what happened or made me feel guilty for being upset about it. Jason nodded thoughtfully. I get that. And for what it's worth, I think it's been good for them to face consequences for once. He stirred his coffee absently. It's made me think about my own role in all this. I've always gone along with the family dynamic because it benefited me, but that meant I was complicit in how they treated you. His self-awareness surprised me. What changed your perspective? Honestly, Timberly, after that video call, she really called me out. Said if we ever have kids, she wouldn't want them treated differently from each other the way you were. He looked genuinely remorseful. I've been thinking a lot about times I could have spoken up for you but didn't. I'm sorry, Amber. His apology meant more than he probably realized. For so long, I had questioned my own perceptions, wondering if I was imagining the differential treatment. Having my brother acknowledge it validated experiences I had doubted for years. We parted with plans to meet again when he was next in town, our sibling relationship evolving into something more authentic than it had ever been. The following week brought a tentative text from Megan. I miss talking to you. I know I wasn't supportive when everything happened. I think I got defensive because deep down I knew it was wrong. We arranged a phone call, during which Megan offered a more substantial apology than her text. I've been thinking about how I would feel if our parents had done that to me, she admitted. I'd be devastated. I shouldn't have dismissed your feelings or called you dramatic. These conversations with my siblings revealed a family system beginning to recalibrate. For years, the dynamics had remained static, with each person playing their assigned role. My refusal to continue in my designated part had forced everyone to adjust, creating space for more honest relationships. Meanwhile, my mother had been sending regular text chatty messages about neighborhood news or family friends that carefully avoid mentioning the conflict. I responded politely but briefly, maintaining emotional boundaries while leaving communication channels open. Nearly 4 months after the confrontation, my phone rang with my mother's number. I hesitated before answering, steeling myself for potential manipulation or guilt tripping. Amber, she began, her voice uncharacteristically tentative. I've been wanting to call for so long, but I wasn't sure you'd answer. I'm answering, I said neutrally. I miss you, she continued, emotion evident in her voice. I know your father sent the final payment, but I realized this was never just about the money. I remained silent, waiting. The way we handled everything with the cruise, it was wrong. We shouldn't have lied about your father's health, and we shouldn't have excluded you from a family trip. She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. I've been doing a lot of thinking about why we did that, and I'm not proud of the answers I've found. Her words surprised me. In all our years of occasional conflicts, my mother had never demonstrated this level of introspection. Why did you do it? I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. She hesitated. I think we've always seen you as the strong one, the independent one who doesn't need us the way Jason and Megan do. It became so easy to take you for granted, she sighed heavily. That's not an excuse. It's just the pattern we fell into, and it wasn't fair to you. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of the years of differential treatment, but it was a start. We spoke for nearly an hour, covering uncomfortable truths that had long been avoided in our family. Though the conversation didn't resolve everything, it opened a door to a more honest relationship moving forward. 2 weeks later, my father called. Our conversation was more stilted than the one with my mother, his discomfort with emotional discussions evident. Still, he managed to express genuine regret. I've never been good at admitting when I'm wrong, he acknowledged. But I was wrong about this, Amber. Not just about asking for the money under false pretenses, but about how we've treated you compared to your siblings. You deserve better. These conversations marked the beginning of a healing process, though I harbored no illusions that decades of established patterns would change overnight. I maintained the boundaries I had established, declining an invitation to a family gathering the following month with a simple, "I'm not ready for that yet, but thank you for understanding." Surprisingly, my parents respected this boundary without pushback, a notable shift from their previous approach of pressure and guilt. This respect for my decision reinforced that something fundamental had changed in our family dynamic. Throughout this period, therapy had been invaluable in helping me process my emotions and establish healthier patterns. Dr. Marshall had guided me in recognizing that forgiveness didn't require forgetting or immediate reconciliation. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, she explained during one session. It's releasing the hold that anger and hurt have on you. It doesn't mean you have to immediately trust those who hurt you or put yourself in a position to be hurt again. This perspective allowed me to work toward forgiveness while maintaining necessary boundaries. I could acknowledge the steps my family was taking without rushing back into patterns that had caused me pain. In my personal life beyond family, these months had brought unexpected growth. The emotional energy previously consumed by maintaining an unbalanced family relationship was now directed toward my own well-being and goals. I had formed deeper friendships, particularly through a support group for adults navigating complicated family relationships. Hearing others' stories helped me recognize that my experiences were not unique and that establishing boundaries was not selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. Professionally, I had received the promotion I'd been working toward, partly because I was more focused and confident at work without the constant drain of family stress. My director had specifically mentioned my increased assertiveness in meetings as a factor in the promotion decision, a direct result of the confidence I had gained by standing up for myself with my family. I had also begun dating someone new, a kind and thoughtful man named Eric who demonstrated what respect in relationships truly looked like. He listened attentively when I shared my family history, never dismissing my feelings or experiences as overreaction. The final family milestone came 6 months after the confrontation, when holiday planning began. In previous years, I had automatically arranged my schedule around family gatherings, regardless of inconvenience or cost. This year, I received a tentative inquiry rather than an expectation. "We're planning Christmas dinner on the 23rd instead of the 24th this year," my mother texted. "We completely understand if that doesn't work with your schedule or if you're not ready to join us yet. Just wanted you to know you're welcome if you'd like to come." The acknowledgement of my agency in the decision represented significant progress. After careful consideration, I decided to attend, setting clear boundaries around my visit. I would drive up for the dinner but stay in a hotel rather than at my parents' house, and I would limit my stay to 2 days. The gathering was somewhat awkward, with moments of tension interspersed with genuine warmth. Bold patterns occasionally surfaced, but I now had the tools and confidence to address them directly rather than silently accommodating them. When my mother made a comment about my career being so demanding, I calmly pointed out that my time was valuable, just as everyone else's was. Throughout the visit, I observed my family with new eyes. My father, making visible efforts to engage equally with all his children. My mother, cashing herself when falling into old habits of differential treatment. My siblings, more aware of family dynamics that had once been invisible to them. The changes were imperfect and incomplete, but they were real. More importantly, I had changed. I no longer defined my worth through my family's approval or measured my value by how much I could give without receiving in return. Driving back to Portland after the holiday visit, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The betrayal that had seemed catastrophic had ultimately become a catalyst for growth and change. By refusing to accept treatment that diminished me, I had created space for more authentic relationships not just with my family, but with myself. The painful lesson had taught me that love shouldn't require sacrificing self-respect, that helping others shouldn't mean enabling harmful behavior, and that family bonds are strengthened, not weakened, by honest communication and appropriate boundary. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, that healing takes time, and that some relationships need to be reimagined rather than simply repair. Most importantly, I had discovered my own strength not just to endure difficulties, but to actively shape my place in my relationship. The journey wasn't complete, and there would surely be setbacks along the way. Family patterns established over decades don't disappear after a few months of awareness. But the direction was clear, and for the first time, I felt genuine hope for healthier family relationships in the future. As I pulled into my apartment parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "How was it? Are you okay?" I smiled as I typed my response. "It was complicated, but I'm more than okay, I'm free." Have you ever found yourself giving financially to family only to discover your generosity was taken for granted? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your worth isn't determined by how much you give without receiving in return.